So our business side of things has actually been going really well. As a bit of context, we like to think of ourselves not just as a treasury company which holds Bitcoin, but we actively want to develop the Lightning Payment Network, which most of your listeners will be familiar with, and many will have used already. So the way we actually make money from our Bitcoin is we are building out a system of routing nodes, and that's our primary means of earning money. So in terms of the actual fundamentals of the business, we've been very, very happy. Like all people in the Bitcoin space, we've been kicked in the teeth by the price action. Although interesting to see what's been happening over the weekend.
Yeah, it's interesting. So you kind of make money like the most natively in Bitcoin. It's kind of like the the most native thing you can possibly earn money in. I mean, there's like mining you can do, but then there's like the equivalent for Lightning. I mean, of course, it's a difference. Bitcoin mining and routing transactions for Lightning. There's two different things, but I mean, it's one of the most native Bitcoin ways to earn Bitcoin directly, and then you hold those Bitcoin on balance sheet. Are you doing any of the fancy balance sheet work that many of the other companies are doing?
That's a really good categorization, yes. And so I tend to, particularly when we're talking to someone who's not in the Bitcoin space, we would like to break down what we do into elements that are familiar with them. So, for example, most people are familiar with the idea of counterparty risk. Counterparty risk is if I am a money lender and I lend you money, then you're my counterparty, and my risk in terms of that money is whether you can repay me, and that risk extrapolates out in many directions. Do you have a job? Are you going to get sick? Are you going to be able to repay that money? Do I have security over that debt that I've lent to you, for example? And most people will be familiar with a mortgage, which is security the bank takes over your house when the bank lends you money. So counterparty risk is a very important thing in financialization. The One of the really interesting things about Lightning is that it enables you to use your capital, to use your Bitcoin in, as you say, a completely native way without counterparty risk. So when we open a Lightning channel and we lock Bitcoin into that channel to enable payments to be made, we're not taking any risk on the other person on the other side of that channel, because if we have a channel between us, between Freddie and Robin, and that channel, let's say you force close that channel, the Bitcoin that we have allocated to that channel will return to us after a period of time, and the longest that time would be a couple of weeks. So you may have a time delay in receiving your Bitcoin, but I don't actually have any risk. So it's not a lending and borrower model as we're often familiar with in financialization, and that for us I think is something that most of the wider fiat world haven't yet understood. The way that you can use your capital in essentially as a trustless and counterparty risk free way.
What is kind of the return actually that you get from that if you lock your, I mean, lock, I don't know if it's lock the right word, but if you lock your Bitcoin into a Lightning channel, what kind of yield on Bitcoin or kind of return on Bitcoin are you seeing in general?
So at the moment, we're getting roughly north of 6% APR on capital committed. That's public information. We disclose that in our first results. Some Lightning channel participants are getting even higher than that. I think Jack Dorsey's block, they achieved the highest results that we've seen in the network. They got nearly 10%. We had modeled when we went to markets of between 4 and 5, so we were happy to get a 6% on committed capital. That's more than enough to keep us happy.
Yeah, I guess it's like if you have if you have a good Bitcoin stack, and is it like if you have more Bitcoin that you could potentially earn more? Is there like economy of scale kind of thing where if you have more experience, more resources, more Bitcoin, that you could out earn someone that has on like a smaller channel and like a smaller stack?
That's very, very true. If anyone has run a Lightning node themselves at home, which I did for many years, and actually I still do. I've got my little computer in the corner, my home server. I have a small Lightning wallet there. It has maybe $100 worth of Bitcoin in it, and that's connected to my Albigo wallet. That is not a routing node, and it doesn't earn me any money. That's just for my day-to-day payments. I did run a routing node a few years ago. I didn't, I think, break even. So you're completely right. The economy of scale is necessary in terms of the amount of Bitcoin you can allocate to channels and to nodes. If anyone wants to look into this, there are very well established websites which will rank nodes reputationally in terms of quality such as uptime, age of the node, number of payments routed, and of course channel capacity, which is really, really important and an interesting thing to think about. So the answer to your question is yes, there is an economy of scale here. And I'd say there's also maybe an economy of skill as well. It's not easy to professionally run Lightning nodes, which is why we think why not many companies are doing this yet. Liquid Technologies are doing it in Canada. Obviously, many of the exchanges run their own Lightning nodes. Those tend to be the on and off ramps for their own exchanges. So yeah, there are probably two barriers to entry that are relatively obvious. One is the skill required in order to do it, the engineering skill, and the other is simply the, as you say, the amount of Bitcoin, the size, the economy of scale.
Let's talk before we go any deeper. Let's talk a little bit about Bitcoin UK and what's kind of been happening. So you have been on, I don't know, like almost a year now, or like three quarters of a year now, something like that. So a lot of things have happened in Bitcoin. A lot of things have happened in ecosystem. Hopefully, also a lot of things have happened in Europe, especially in the UK. What do you kind of see that has happened in Bitcoin in the recent months and half a year?
So probably the most significant development in the UK is that the regulatory position has been slowly moving forwards. And to make a distinction, I think, between the European approach, the EU approach, and the UK approach, obviously most of your listeners will know that in the EU, they developed MiCA, the Market in Crypto Assets regulation. And that was really a bespoke piece of regulation to deal with the whole of the crypto asset market, including Bitcoin. What they've done in the UK is slightly different. I'm not yet sure that it's better, but it's it's definitely different. The approach they've taken there is to amend and extend existing financial regulation to also make that applicable to Bitcoin, which in some ways is working in an interesting way, and I'm more positive about it than I was maybe 2 or 3 years ago. And we can maybe unpack a little bit about that as well. So the context for that is that obviously 3 years ago I co-founded Bitcoin Policy UK. Although I don't do as much for the team there as I did previously because I'm not very much tied up with BHODL. As CEO of BHODL, I do have a vested interest, obviously, in ensuring that the regulatory environment in the United Kingdom, where we operate and where I live, is as good for Bitcoin as it possibly can be. And as part of that, BHODL has a seat on the advisory board for the secretariat to the all-party parliamentary group, who attempts to steer and I suppose to provide good feedback to politicians who are actually making these laws.
It's such an interesting field because if you think about how anti-government and how anti-politician Bitcoiners in this beginning were, and how cypherpunk it was, if you would have game theoried out all of it, you would have had to foresee that at some point Bitcoin has to kind of integrate in the political system. We have to get long-term political support because politicians themselves will get orange pilled, and we don't want Bitcoin to be an underground asset. We want Bitcoin to be something that is acceptable. And so we like imagine the other way around. Imagine Bitcoin would be an underground asset. Like this podcast would be very hard to even do. It would be very hard to be in
Well,
Bitcoin
you
because it
might be
would
doing it from
maybe be a concern. Like a illegal thing. Yeah, like I would be like followed by people. Like it would be like horrible. But it's like this is like a lot of people like complain about like we working with regulators and like the political layer gets kind of integrated with Bitcoin, and we're kind of pushing for better Bitcoin regulation. But this is kind of necessary for Bitcoin, even if some Bitcoiners don't really want to see the necessary evil that we kind of have to do there.
You're completely right, and it's funny, isn't it? You have this continuous tension between your cypherpunk instincts and, I suppose maybe your professional instincts. I feel that myself all the time. You know, I'm a lawyer by training. I now work in a listed company. We deal with regulators all the time. In my advocacy work, I pushed for many years for good regulation and good understanding of Bitcoin and the Bitcoin space. But at the same time, you feel a sense of resentment that you have to do that. But I think one point that occurred to me while you were speaking there, if we are right about Bitcoin, this was always inevitable. I like your game theory idea. You had to game theory your way to a point where this was such an enormous asset and such an important development in in human technology that everyone was going to be interested in it. Everyone was going to use it. Governments, companies, individuals, everyone. So this isn't. I love your game theory idea. This was a natural evolution if you take it to its logical conclusion.
Let's talk a little bit more about Bitcoin Treasury companies because I think it's a fascinating space that gets a lot of heat from TradFi and from Bitcoin, which is a fascinating thing to see. I personally think, especially like the big ones like Strategy, is one of the most misunderstood trades of all time because the Bitcoiners that should understand it, they don't like it because it's not self-custody Bitcoin and it's in the TradFi world, and then the TradFi world doesn't like it because it has Bitcoin in it. So it has potential. It has to be the potential that Strategy might just be the most misunderstood stock on planet Earth, especially at that size of stock. How do you look at treasury companies in general, maybe also specifically Strategy, just because I think they're playing in a league of their own? And how do you look at the development that has happened in Bitcoin treasury companies?
Maybe starting with Strategy, I think you're correct that they are in a class of their own, and that's predominantly due to size and first mover advantage. So I forget how many Bitcoin they have, but they are close. I think they're around about 250,000 Bitcoin now, maybe even more than. I can't really see anyone else catching them. So to do what they're doing, I can't see any other company being able to raise that much money. But then what they're doing is fascinating. And as you say, it's poorly understood both by the TradFi side and also by Bitcoiners. Like we said a few minutes ago, if this is going to be the most important asset, certainly in our lifetime and probably in this epoch of human history, then all kinds of companies and governments and investors are going to get exposure to it in many, many different ways. You know, one of the fascinating things about Bitcoin is that it is a different asset depending on who you are, where you live in the world, and what you want to do with it. You know, if I'm a North Korean dissident and I'm trying to receive money so that I can continue my work undercover, I'm not going to be investing in Strike. I'm going to be needing money in my self-custodial wallet that I can use on my Graphene OS phone, and I can continue making receiving payments in the most adversarial environment imaginable. If I'm a bond investor in the United States who wants a stable yield and a predictable return of capital. If you're a bond investor in the United States and you want stable return of capital, then your use of Bitcoin is completely different from a dissident or a freedom fighter in an authoritarian regime. And for any of us to say that the way that we want to use Bitcoin is the only correct way, I think is a bit of a misunderstanding of how important an asset it is. And it is a neutral technology, and however you want to use it is the way that it is going to be used.
And I think that's the important point. Like no matter what you believe of anyone, if you truly think that Bitcoin is what it is, you cannot be bothered by anyone else that do something else with Bitcoin. Because if what is the worst case situation for someone using Bitcoin in a way you disagree with, that somehow your Bitcoin and your situation is affected by that. But if that would
Yeah.
be the case, Bitcoin wouldn't be Bitcoin. Bitcoin would be something else. Bitcoin wouldn't be the freedom and sovereignty tool that we love and we envision it to be. And so, if that's the case, then I guess you are not a Bitcoiner. Like then you don't believe in the Bitcoin mission. And so, as long if you really believe in the Bitcoin mission, if you really think that Bitcoin is what it is, then you couldn't be bothered less by what anyone else is doing with Bitcoin, because they only can burn themselves and maybe tank the price. Like if you think strategy is a complete pyramid scheme and really bad, what is the worst thing that can happen to you? That they lose all their Bitcoin and short term or maybe even medium term, because they're so bad, the price tanks. So you get cheaper Satoshis, so you get more of the freedom tool, and it's better distributed across everyone. That's a huge positive thing for you. That's why I don't understand the Bitcoiners that hate on strategy, because the worst possible outcome for that is your best possible outcome.
I love that. So the worst possible outcome for strategy is cheaper Satoshis for everyone else, right?
If it really is imploding, as I don't know, I don't see how this should possibly happen, but if it's really imploding, then 800,000 Bitcoin get redistributed across the network, which brings a cheaper Bitcoin price to everyone, brings a better distribution, and it's awesome. If you're not holding strategy in that situation, you're great. And I'm holding strategy, I don't think it will happen. I think strategy will have an amazing future. But that to the side, that's why I don't understand the critic of Bitcoiners. I don't know, maybe I don't see an argument there. But anyways, it's really interesting what's happening with strategy. Maybe let's go on the broader Bitcoin Treasury company space. How have you kind of seen what's going on there? Because it has been more brutal. The market has been even more brutal to the remaining of the Bitcoin Treasury space than it has been brutal to Bitcoin or even to strategy.
It has, and I'm a bit biased here. So I think over time, we will probably see a divergence of the ecosystem. And with a UK perspective, we're in an interesting position in the UK because our regulator already requires every new Bitcoin Treasury company effectively not to be a Bitcoin Treasury company on day one. They have to have a viable operating business that is the lifeblood of the company, and they're free to hold Bitcoin on their balance sheet and obviously to issue equity or to issue other forms of instrument against that Bitcoin on their balance sheet. But every Bitcoin Treasury company in the UK has to have an operating business that is distinct from its treasury function. So Smarter Web, for example, their underlying business is web development. XCE, you probably are familiar with, they are a recruitment business that has a Bitcoin Treasury strategy. BHODL is interesting because our business is also focused on Bitcoin as well. So our Bitcoin is building out and running Lightning routing nodes. So we are, from a TradFi perspective, we are a payment services business. We are building out payment infrastructure that happens to be running on Bitcoin, which also then lets us multiply the Bitcoin that we have. But each treasury company in the United Kingdom already has this underlying business function. And if I had to guess, and again, to be a bit arrogant here, I might say that other treasury companies throughout the world may eventually need to move into that kind of space as well. At the end of the day, any business, as you well know, needs to keep the lights on.
The first thing that every Bitcoiner does, and the most important activity that every Bitcoiner keeps on doing, is buying Bitcoin. And I personally use Relay to buy and sometimes also spend or sell my Bitcoin. And there are two main reasons why I do so. The first one is it's Bitcoin only. They do not do any shit coins. They do not do any cryptos, any stocks, or anything else. This is a tool, an app that is fully focused only and solely on Bitcoin. The second one is self-custody. They give you the keys to your Bitcoin the moment you buy them. You never give them the control over your Bitcoin, and you don't have to trust them because you can verify that you and only you have the keys to your Bitcoin. There's no third-party risk. There's no freezing of your assets. There's no rug pulling. There's nothing of that. Download Relay, the app, on your phone, or go to relay.app on your browser and use code Robin to save fees and get cheaper Bitcoin. I want to tell you about something very special to me. It's called micro-seed. If you hold your Bitcoin in self-custody, and you should, you know how critical it is to secure your seed phrase. You should not have them on paper. You should not have them on anything else than titanium. With micro-seed, you can engrave your 12 or 24 word seed phrase, the entire seed phrase, onto a 1-inch small washer. Yes, just one washer. All 24 words on that one washer. You can hide that thing everywhere. And even better, you don't need to buy a new kit every time you have to get a new wallet. You can make unlimited backups because microseed is not selling the washer. Microseed is selling the device that stamps the washer. So you get the full kit with the device, with the washers, with the hammer, with everything you need to get started today, and you can make with that unlimited amount of backups. Go now to microseed.io.